How many of y'all ever been to a museum? Raise your hand if y'all been to a museum, all right? Y'all been to a museum. Some of you have been to a museum. When you go to a museum, I've been to several of them throughout the country. I love them. I like history. I like looking at, different pieces of art. I like different sculptures. I like even the natural history. I like, dinosaurs, and I like all the bones, and I like all the artifacts. I like all that kind of stuff. And one time I went to a museum in California, that's where I'm from, and I was going with my wife. We were going on a date, and I looked around in the museum, and have you ever noticed that there's a lot of different kinds of people in a museum? There are the casual goers, what I call the casual people. There are the people that, these are the type of people that just go because, they wanted to get out and try something new. This could be the school, field trip where they got a bunch of kids running around. They're doing little field trip science projects. Or maybe it's the date, the guy went on the date with the girl to the art museum. And, come on, guys, y'all remember what you used to do for your lady before you married her, right? You went all to the thing. Now you don't do any of that. But like before you did it, and you would go out, and so you see the guys. But then I noticed when I was there, there was another type of person that went there, and which what I like to call the connoisseur. It was a museum connoisseur. It was the person that had the monthly membership to the museum, and they went all the time. They did studies on the paintings. They knew about the artists. They knew about the techniques. They knew about the background. Come on. They knew about how it came about. They went, and they always looked like this. This is how they have a typical look at the museum, and they always lean. They grab their chin, right? And they're staring at the museum painting for long periods of time. Now, I'm confused by that, naturally, because I'm not a museum connoisseur. I don't know a lot about what's going on. So I was curious, because I'm a curious person by nature, and I walked up to this guy that saw a connoisseur. I walked up to him and I said, I'm going to ask this guy a question, because I want to know, what's this guy seeing? What are you looking at, And so I stand next to him, and guys, we have guy code. Guys, you know what I'm talking about here. Guys, we have guys code. We don't really say hi. We say what's up with our head. We do the nod. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Right? We kind of get next to each other. We're too cool to say hi. We got to get next to him and just, sup. So I did the sup thing. We supped. And so we talked, and we didn't really talk, but we talked. And he was looking at it, and I leaned over, and I looked at him, and I asked him this question. I said, what are you looking at? And he looked at me. And he leaned back into me a little bit. Kind of freaked me out. I'm a little honest. So I didn't know who you were. Gets really close to me, and he kind of almost leans into my personal space. How many of y'all have personal space you don't like to be, like, this is my personal space, especially now, like with COVID, you're like, my personal space became like, all over everywhere. So anyway, he leans into my personal, and he goes, do you see it? And I was like, what? And he goes, do you, and he looks at me, and he, big eyes, do you, and he lowers his voice, very dramatic, very, very whispery, and he goes, do you see it? And at that point, I was a little freaked out, so I kind of went with him. I'm like, no, man, what are you talking about? And he goes, do you see the paintbrushes with the strokes and the colors? And you can tell that the intersection of light and dark inside of his soul as the colors came in, when he had emotion driven behind. You can tell when he did it in this corner, he was mad. And when he was in this corner, he painted sad because it had sad brush. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's just a painting. But he was so deep, so deep into it. He had researched it enough, he had been around it enough that he saw it in a way that most people did not. Okay? Now, silly story, but there's truth behind it. The Bible is an incredible work of art. And many people, oftentimes, this is just a painting you hang on the wall for decoration. Some of you have it on your coffee table, and it's collecting dust. Some of you have it in a drawer next to your bed, like the Gideons. Some of you have it in a closet, or it's somewhere in your life, but you don't really use it, and you don't go deep with it, and you don't get anything from it, because it's just another painting to you. It's just another piece of art. But there's so much depth inside Scripture that I wanted to introduce to you, maybe even a way you could look at Scripture that I often do. I've been studying and preaching the Bible for almost 20 years. And what's interesting about Scripture is that it has so many layers. Scholars, one of the ways you can study the Bible is through a term called typology. Typology is this. Typology is the study of reoccurring themes inside Scripture. So because this is a Scripture book full of a bunch of books that are written by different artists over multiple periods periods of time, you can actually study and find different types, they call it typology, and different themes throughout Scripture to actually give you an idea of what God's really trying to do. So there's a bunch of stories inside the Bible, and then there's some overarching themes of what God's trying to do.